It's PRESSCORE people. I'm David Cruz. It's only been 3 days, and MIKIE Sherrill is already facing a storm. Before we start in on the coming snowmageddon, let's look at what happened this week. Here's our panel. Kenneth Byrne covers New Jersey for WHYY. Jelani Gibson is a State House reporter for NJ Advanced Media. And Daniel Hahn covers the state for Politico. Gents, welcome. Let's start in frigid Newark Tuesday for the inaugural. There was the speech, there was the mall ball, a lot of stuff happened. Jelani, I think I saw you at NJPAC. You look like a photographer walking around there with your big camera rig. What were your impressions of the day?
Yeah, very few people actually know that I got started in this business as a photographer as opposed to a writer. But the inauguration, specifically the speech, it was a very forceful speech. It was a speech that indicated that she wanted to show her supporters that she was ready to fight against Trump, and that's basically what everybody's going to be looking for during this administration, to see how genuine those comments are and to see how she holds up underneath fire.
She did have some really pointed references to the current president, compared him directly to King George, and what I thought was a pretty interesting segment of that speech. Daniel, MIKIE Sherrill's best speech?
So I actually do think you're hearing from a lot of different folks that the speech itself was delivered very well, and Cheryl herself is becoming a better orator since the campaign. That was a very common thing during the campaign. People didn't think she was the most engaging speaker, but I definitely think that's starting to change now. I think that you saw two themes in that speech that we're definitely going to hear a lot over the next 4 years, or I should say at least the next 3 years, and that is Trump and affordability. And you saw that, as you mentioned, with the references to King George and some pushback against ICE. I mean, you even had members of of NATO countries that were represented in the audience there.
Yeah.
And then she also spoke a lot about affordability, and even halfway, or I shouldn't say halfway, but during her speech, she went out of her way to sign those first two executive orders, which freezes utility rates by using some funds that customers pay on their utility bills to freeze rates for now, and then
Yeah.
also trying to put more power generation online.
I want to talk about some of the executive orders in a second. Kenny, let me get your thoughts on the day itself, the speech.
Well, the speech, for my purposes, the last 10 minutes were the most interesting because it actually focused on New Jersey. We knew she was going to go after Trump. And in fact, I would say any Democrat who won an election will use Trump as a calling card to say, hey, we're going to stand up to the current president and some of the actions that we don't like. But it was rather telling me that she spoke about what North Jersey residents wanted and what South Jersey residents were hoping for. But here's the thing: the inauguration was held in Newark, in North Jersey, and she did pay a visit to Camden on MLK Day.
Yep.
But the question is, will she actually do more than just add a few talking points for South Jersey?
Important matters now. The inaugural ball. Great dress, weird setting. Who among you was lucky enough to be there for that?
Yeah, when they said that my presence was not required unless I wished it, I agreed with their wishes.
You were like, I do not wish it. Thank you very much.
Did you
Kenneth,
know that Naughty by Nature was going to be there?
that's that, you led me right to it. Probably in the future, you should say no OPP. I mean,
I had no idea what that was when it was playing. I was just question mark, and then everyone on X, formerly known as Twitter, was going crazy about it, and I just didn't get it. Just didn't connect.
Oh, Daniel.
yeah, no OPP. But Dan, do you know what it is now?
I mean, after seeing the videos and
Yes.
seeing the governor, dancing groove into the music, yes. But if you asked me before January 20th, I would have said, hmm.
All right,
Who do we
fair
think
enough.
is
Okay,
a better dancer?
let's point this out. I feel obligated because I play a historian on the internets. So keep in mind, Mikey Sherrill was just turned 54. So when she was in high school and college, that was like the line where suburbia, and for the record, I'm from one end of the DC suburbs, she's from the other. Um, that was the part in time where hip hop had started to become mainstream. So it seems weird to see a middle-aged white woman dance to OPP on the stage of an inaugural ball, but if you really think about it, that's when MTV really started embracing hip hop more and more and more on their regular playlist, not just for 30 minutes out of the day with Dr. Dre and Ed Lover.
You know, there's some important context for a highfalutin journalist panel right there. Thank you, Kenneth.
And Daniel, Google it. Google everything I just said.
Totally. To some of the business at hand, anyway, a group of executive orders. What did she do, Daniel, on day one? You started talking about it earlier.
Yes, so there were three other executive orders. One kept in place the ethical conduct rules that have been in place for a while now. I think that what I found like the most interesting out of all of them, and I should add another one. It formally created the office of the chief operating officer within the governor's office, which
Right,
is
that's
run
new.
by Kelly Doucette, a longtime Cheryl aide. What I thought was interesting out of some of the executive orders I just mentioned was that the one creating the COO, the one regarding permitting and red tape, and the one regarding youth online mental health, a lot of those two policy oriented executive orders, they all run through the COO's office, which is Doucette. So I think that really speaks to who is Cheryl leaning on in this administration to get her goals done. And I think Kelly Doucette is going to play a really strong role in that, given the power she now has through the executive orders that Cheryl signed.
Yeah, you know, and they definitely seem to have a strategy already in place. Kenny, I've already heard like 5 times Mikey Sherrill for president. It's never too soon, right?
You know, they always say that when there's like new excitement in the air. We saw it with Wes Moore. Josh Shapiro, not so much because around that time they were vetting him for vice president, but slow down, folks. We haven't even gotten a full week into the Cheryl administration. Let's see what she does in about 3 years.
It has been said and it has been talked about. But look, it's 4 years. We've got 4 years.
Let me
And
say though, in nowadays, you know, that's really not that long away. It's you got to really kind of start early, no? I mean, you know, for a minute there, they were talking about Murphy for president early on.
yeah, and now look where we are, right? So we're not talking about Murphy for president anymore. And so that's what I'm saying. You know, it's 4 to 8 years that we're talking about here. And so when I hearing every governor's name for president, I mean it's almost like the presidential election is going to be just as crowded as the New Jersey primary.
I do think that this is a reflection of how all politics is national these days.
Yeah.
Also, I think that basically every American governor wakes up in the morning, looks in the mirror, and sees a future US president. So New Jersey governors have always tended to be a little bit of national figures,
Yeah.
and I think that Cheryl is definitely playing into that. And because she performed, her inaugural speech was viewed as one that was delivered well, people are already throwing the presidential hype up in the air.
A
Uh,
well-delivered speech doesn't mean anything.
I was just thinking because, you know, we've got this big snowstorm coming this weekend that early on, Chris Christie got smacked for his terrible response to the storm, and Murphy got smacked for his terrible response to his first storm. This is really a big make or break storm already, Jelani. You guys wrote about it this week.
Yeah, I mean the funniest thing that I also find about that is that when Murphy struggled with the storm, Chris Christie called into a radio station and,
Which one?
it was and he calls in a 101, and he complains about how he was stuck on the road for hours, for like 4 to 5 hours or something, in what was supposed to be a 35-minute trip.
Yeah.
And so, some people, some people, during that moment called that karma for his handling of the storm. There were some people that were happy that the former governor had to go through the suffering that he put others through. And and in other ways, it was just a continuation of a saga. I mean, look, New Jersey is already the most densely populated place in the world. The insurance rates are crazy. We know how the drivers here work, which is bipolar to say the least.
Yeah.
And when you add a winter storm to the most densely populated state in the world, and arguably some of the most pissed off drivers in the world, it's chaos. It's pure terror. And the storm is always a metaphor for the collective nature of how New Jerseyans feel frustrated. It's almost like if you can't handle the storm, then they don't trust you on anything else in politics. But it's also for people that don't follow politics, right?
Yeah.
I was literally in the car on my way to the inauguration, and the driver was asking me, "Who's the governor now?" And then the driver asked me, said, "Well, what about that other guy, Cory Booker?" And I'm like, "Oh no, he's a senator." And then my Lyft driver follows up and says, "Well, what about Ras Baraka? Is he still the mayor?" And I'm like, "Yeah, he's still the mayor." And so like I'm having this conversation with my Lyft driver, and I'm like, "Yeah, there are people out here that don't follow who the senator or who the
No.
governor is, but everybody follows the weather. Everybody follows the storm and the salt on the roads." And so it's going to be something that people pay attention to.
It's a metaphor that could come with 12 to 16 inches of snow, Kenneth.
Yes, so as we sit here at time of taping, facing our impending doom, we are trying to figure out. In fact, there's going to be a press conference later today. We'll see how prepared she is, but
Yeah.
if we didn't get the impending doom, quote unquote, we would have found something else to complain about.
Yeah.
I mean,
Daniel, we got to get the bread. We got to get the milk.
don't forget the toilet paper.
See, I already went to Costco last weekend, so I'm well stocked up.
Let's take the storm metaphor further than we needed to take it. There are, however, some storms coming in this administration. Dan, you want to stretch the metaphor for us a little more? Well, what is she facing? What is she facing in this first year, at least?
So, that's a very open-ended question, David. I think that if I were to put it in very broad terms, you have a federal government that is often at odds with democratic states, capital D democratic states, and you actually just saw that because the Trump administration just announced they're going to review federal funding sent to blue states that have immigration policies that limit cooperation between ICE and local law enforcement and ICE.
Yep.
New Jersey is part of that list. So that's just one example of one of the challenges Cheryl will have to face. How do you navigate the Trump administration in the year 2026? Murphy's theory of the case was to not quite be publicly speaking out, but also file lawsuits against the Trump administration, but also try to be a little bit diplomatic. Then you have someone like California Governor Gavin Newsom, who's basically running for president, who's going scorched earth against the Trump administration. So that's one big picture issue. I think the other issue that we're going to see is another going to be a really big test, perhaps a storm, if we're going to use that metaphor again.
Nice.
Is how will Cheryl address the first budget? Because we know that there is, depending on who you talk to, a $1.5 billion to $4 billion structural deficit, $7 billion surplus, and a budget that is roughly $60 billion. So is she going to make some tough decisions, basically by way of tax cuts, or not tax hikes, or cuts to programs, or does she spend down the surplus, which could create a headache in future years? So those are just some of the things I'm watching out for.
Yeah, Jelani, outside forces for sure will come into play, but then issues closer to home. Pressure on her for immigration. There are a couple of lawmakers already who said they're going to go back to the issue of codifying the immigrant trust directive, et cetera.
Yeah, so I mean, they passed three bills, and Murphy vetoed two of them. He vetoed the one that would codify the immigrant trust directive, and he
Yeah.
vetoed another one that would limit the sharing of data between state facilities and things like that. And that's oftentimes also been a criticism of so-called sanctuary cities by a lot of immigrant right groups that you know, um, law enforcement might be limited in working with ICE, but they might not necessarily be limited in sharing information with ICE. And so it's clear that this legislation is meant to tighten up what those advocates consider to be loopholes and to make those protections stronger. Cheryl has said that she supports the Immigrant Trust Directive. She hasn't said much about the bill that limits the sharing of information.
Yeah.
And so that's one to essentially look out for right there.
Kenneth, also, it's the budget, obviously, that's going to drive everything. But there's got to be pressure now from progressives, particularly, a handful of lawmakers who came on with no allegiance to any machine. You think that moves the agenda on anything from immigration bills to civilian complaint review boards, et cetera?
We'll certainly find out. Even though you have more Democrats that are not beholden to machines, you still have Nick Scutari as Senate President.
Yeah.
You still have Craig Coughlin as Assembly Speaker. Particularly with Scutari, he seems to be more heavy-handed compared to his Assembly counterpart. The other thing, there's two things I'm looking at. One, how will a President Trump react to or interact with a Governor Sherrill? Because I wouldn't be surprised if President Trump, as much as he tried to get Jack Ciattarelli elected, if he decides to make another example out of New Jersey. Uh, let's just say the demographics are right as far as our governor now. And then two, and Daniel, this is another point Daniel brought up. Um, I can't figure out what it is. Someone help me. So whether it's the budget or your affordability issues, those are the main things that you should look out for, or at least I'm looking out for the first 6 months.
Yeah. All right. Let me move on from this. Running out of time here. Real quick, a couple of things. Malinowski getting attacks from this Israeli PAC. Kind of weird, no, Ken? Wasn't he like one of those really pro-Israel guys?
It's 2026. Up is down, left is right,
Yeah.
and this is why they call it strings bedfellows.
All right. Ana Lilia Mejia, Bernie Sanders, drawing a big crowd this week in New Jersey. Momentum, Jelani?
What's very apparent to me for the strategy for this specific campaign is that she's going out of her way to harness a lot of grassroots energy. She's doing these sort of pop-ups, these town halls. She's going into communities and serving as like a waiter to hear concerns and everything. That seems like that's going to be the progressive playbook for a lot of things that they're running for. And by her own words, when she spoke at the town hall that I went to, she said that she wanted to approach this political moment as an organizer, and that she also hearkened back to other people like Barack Obama, who who was still a high profile person in the Democratic Party, who also had a background as an organizer.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Brendan Gill still racking up endorsements. Kenneth, is that going to be enough to do it? Or Malinowski's got money as well?
We'll find out. We definitely learned a lesson out of New York City. Just because you get a lot of endorsement doesn't necessarily mean you win. At the same time, just because you're not establishment or our establishment, nothing's guaranteed right now from what I see.
I
Go ahead,
uh,
Daniel.
just an initial thought. I do think that New York City is very different from New Jersey because in New York City, you do have like Democratic Socialists. And in the New Jersey suburbs, you definitely have progressives, but I don't know if the New Jersey Democrats are quite at the point of being Democratic Socialists. We're seeing some more lefty figures pop up in the state, primarily in places like Jersey City with political machines on the
Yeah.
whole somewhat in decline.
I
But
probably should have said Pennsylvania because you had Conor Lamb go up with John Fetterman, and Fetterman just cleaned his clock in that primary.
All right, nobody cares about Pennsylvania on this show.
Well, I do. They're
Anyway.
half my audience.
I'm running out of time. So I want to say my friend and colleague, Brenda Flanagan, would not want me to make a big fuss over her retirement, but tough.
Brenda Flanagan started her career in TV journalism at New Jersey Network, better known as NJN, back in 1981.
They warned the Reagan administration may soon seek to eliminate some student loan programs. On Saturday, EPA decided to respond. South Jersey Congressman Jim Florio, who toured the site Monday, explained why. But all the casinos do agree on one point. They won't oppose the experiment.
She then moved to WWOR, where she started the station's Trenton Bureau and anchored public affairs programs, covering consumer stories like this one on long lines at the DMV.
Besides paying income taxes, this is probably the only place where most residents have direct contact with the state. Currently, it's about as pleasant as paying income taxes, and savvy politicians realize that. So expect some changes to be made soon, again.
And uncovering the tactics of fraudulent debt collectors.
You'll get to hear that and these other recordings where debt collectors threaten, terrify, and possibly push a victim to suicide.
Brenda won multiple Emmys, including for her work on an undercover investigative series on racial profiling, Driving While Black.
Channel 9 News has investigated racial profiling for the past 20 years, when our award-winning stories uncovered profiling on the New Jersey Turnpike and in Nassau and Suffolk counties. We used hidden cameras to gather evidence.
Brenda joined our team, then NJ Today, in 2013. From transportation to healthcare to politics, she's covered it all.
81-year-old Phil McDonald got in the long line at Zenleaf, a cannabis dispensary in Elizabeth, and shared stoner stories while waiting to shop for legal weed.
Reporting for weeks on Senator Menendez's corruption trial.
At one point, I saw a juror hold up a plastic bag with a 1 kilo gold bar and go, wow. So obviously, this did make an impression.
And becoming a trusted voice on the COVID-19 pandemic, from the devastation at hospitals.
Dr. Nazar Kafaya wants the public to see, so he gave us protective gear to walk through the ICU and another patient floor at Hudson Regional Hospital.
To the hope brought by vaccines.
The relentless demand for vaccines about to grow. Hundreds of thousands more New Jerseyans are about to become eligible April 5th. That's when folks age 55 plus are going to be onboarded.
She reported on the concerns of transgender residents in the state and brought our viewers personal stories of refugees settling here and making new lives for their families.
Luda Holovko fled Ukraine and is settled for now in Jersey City, where she's studying English at Hudson Community College. With the remarkable resilience you often see in kids, Holovko's 4-year-old daughter Nicole is thriving, making friends at a Montessori school. We asked, "You having fun?"
Uh-huh. I see my friend over there.
Brenda never turned down a chance to hear from frustrated commuters.
NJ Transit blames an engineer shortage, mechanical breakdowns, and trains taken out of service to be outfitted with federally mandated positive train control safety gear. Rail riders blame NJ Transit.
And even got an opportunity to do some lighter fare from time to time. A lifelong animal lover, she always looked for an opportunity to include them, especially cats, in her stories. Brenda won her most recent Emmy this past year for a story about Messi the Miracle Cat, separated from her family in the war in Ukraine and, incredibly, somehow reunited.
I'm Brenda Flanagan, NJ Spotlight News.
She is irreplaceable, and we will miss her immeasurably as she moves on to spend more time in her favorite role, Mimi, to her 2 grandchildren. This is probably the hardest goodbye for me, Brent.
Brenda is calling it quits this week. She is, as was noted today several times, a legend in this business, as dogged and determined to chase down and surround any story she smelled. Think of Shohei Ohtani, except 40 years worth of that. She moves on to full-time duties as grandma starting this week, as good a retirement gift as 100 gold watches. Brenda, meow, meow, mama.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Brenda is an absolute sweetheart. Whenever I cross paths with her, nothing but nice. And then just to work alongside her, growing up, watching her in Maryland, because back then Channel 9 was a super station. So obviously Channel 9 was my first introduction to New Jersey.
All right. Press Corps is done for the week. Dan, Ken, Jelani, good to see you all. Thank you. And thanks to all of you for streaming, liking, and subscribing. I'm David Cruz. We'll see you next week.